Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall. And I think if I know correctly, we're back for another, hopefully final experience in Gulf Breeze for now, right? This week, that's what we're doing?
Yes, this will be part 4 of my coverage of the Gulf Breeze UFO, which mostly relates to the experiences of one Ed Walters and his family. And my God, I don't even really know what to say about this one. It's a very, the ending, I think this ending it's a very funny ending to me.
Is it like a nice, like, ironic twist, you know? Like, actually, all of this is taking place in an alternate dimension or some bullshit. I don't know.
Unfortunately, this is all taking place in a dream that's being had by a man who's in a coma in a hospital.
Yeah, there you go.
No, it's just the way that this plays out is weird and funny. I'm going to launch right into it. If you haven't heard the last 3 parts of this, start from episode 370. We have been covering this for a handful of episodes now. And I told Niall up front before we started recording, like, here's the thing. For people who maybe already know this story or are familiar with where all of this goes, I'm going to finish this series on this episode, but there's more. There's more that could be its own little mini series, and I'm not going to be covering it, but I am going to leave it as a cliffhanger at the very end.
And look, we can always come back.
I will come back probably. It might be interesting. The thing is, I have to read an entire other book, and I read Ed Walters' fucking book for this.
Yeah.
And it was like 200 some pages, and I just don't have time to read another one right now. But
yeah, these ones that require, spending like a whole week doing stuff. It takes a little while.
It takes a bit out of you. Yeah.
Yeah. So we got to do something light next. I think I think reset.
I have
reset the palette.
A couple light, fun things up my sleeve that I could tap into for the next couple episodes. So let's see if we can get that going. So this week, Niall, we are in the midst of an official MUFON investigation, and Ed, of course, has put on a show for them. And the editor over at the Gulf Breeze Sentinel, Dwayne Cook, he's getting videotaped and freaking out on videotape, and he's like, "Is my eye moving, Dwayne? Dwayne, is my eye moving?" Here's a little side note about this, and I think this is in a book somewhere that I don't currently have access to, but I was sort of reading about it. But Jim Moseley, who wrote the publication known as Saucer Smear.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, you know how last episode I talked about a video that has Ed Walters supposedly experiencing the approach of the UFO. He's got the buzzing in his mind, and he's freaking out with Dwayne Cook and stuff in the truck and all that. Like, there's a videotape, right?
Okay.
That's real. There is a videotape
really?
of that.
Have you seen it?
No, because he decides not to release it. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but at some point, Jim Moseley, who is a pretty skeptical guy for the most part, gets to see this videotape, and the very broad idea behind his remarks about the videotape are like he almost couldn't keep himself from laughing.
Okay.
And he equates the experience that Ed seems to be putting on in the video more akin to demonic possession than alien visitation, or what you would expect from alien visitation. But he apparently freaks out. So at some point, people have seen this, but I do believe that Ed has withheld this quote unquote evidence. Just generally, like I don't think it ever actually made it out into any like media that was publicly available. So,
man, I can't wait till someone buys a bunch of old VHS tapes at an estate sale in fucking 40 years.
Yeah, after Ed's fucking 6 feet under,
and it's just like
turned into a skeleton.
Someone gets it and just like uploads it somewhere. That'll be a fun day. I'm looking forward to that.
That'll be, yeah, I would honestly love that. I would love to see this footage. I mean, from what I understand, it's mostly boring, but if you could just cut to the good bits, we don't need the Snyder cut of the Ed Walters UFO experience. We could just watch the good bits.
We need like the AMV cut where they just take all the best footage and put it over a song,
Yeah,
that'd be good.
Yeah, it's Ed Walters pretending to get buzzed by a UFO to pop a roach. That would be fucking awesome.
It's Ed Walters' last resort.
Oh shit. So that's a lot of what we covered. He's continuing to be visited by these UFOs. And there's all the weird bullshit with them. They call him Zehas. They speak to him psychically. All kinds of bizarre stuff. Now, not a lot happens between the last encounter that was on January 24th, 1988, and the next one. In between that, there's this circular patch of grass that's discovered in a field not too far from the Walters' house. The Walters and MUFON get pictures of it, but so does a field agent from the Center for UFO Studies. They come in and they test the site, and they also release a report that basically says outside of discolored grass, there's nothing of note here, no radiation, nothing. Notably, the Center for UFO Studies, or CUFOs, CUFOs, I eat them. I don't know about that one.
I was looking for something to do with that, and I wasn't coming up with anything, so I'm glad you tried.
Thank you. No, they get brought up, but they are, and I'm getting a lot of this stuff from Ed Walters' book, which is called just the UFO, the Gulf Breeze UFOs, and they don't get brought up, I think, for a reason, but we'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
So MUFON investigators are also asking Ed some typical abductee questions, things like, do you have any strange recurring dreams, or have you experienced missing time? And they also, again, bring up regressive hypnosis. And in his book, Ed claims to make some nods and gestures towards those experiences, but tells MUFON he doesn't think much of it. Like, basically, yeah, he thinks that maybe sometime in his past he's had recurring dreams, he's had missing time, but not recently, and he doesn't really think it's anything, or so he says. But in the book, he kind of is like in talking about internally recalling dreams of flying in an object with a glass window from many years ago, instances of missing time in his life, just all these things that would indicate that he had been abducted at some point. And previously to these experiences with the UFO that's visiting his house.
I know you just said you said it was only like a glass window. For some reason I just imagined this guy was in the Great Glass Wonka Vader.
Yes.
You know, like which is not what you said, but I just think that would be a really fun thing for an alien ship to be.
I mean, let's be honest. Willy Wonka and his whole shtick is not very dissimilar to an alien abduction experience. I like, you know, he takes you, he shows you all kinds of strange sights, and then, you know, he straps you to a table and you drink his drinks and they fly you into the sky. There's just a lot of things that are very alien about Willy Wonka, and then he flies you into the elevator into the sky or whatever. I don't remember how that book ends.
Look, the thing that we all can tell from what you just said is that you have a very good recollection of the events of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
You. Yeah. Like Ed Walters has the golden ticket for UFO abductions, basically. Yeah. So on January 26th, Ed has his 14th sighting. Ed's been ruminating on the upcoming TV documentary that he agreed to, and he's worrying about his name coming out to the public. You know, that he thinks it, like, it inevitably does lead back to him. And he's kind of tried to stay anonymous for now. So the filming of the documentary, because of his concerns, it ends up delayed until February 1st. Ed strikes a deal, like an agreement with the WEAR news director, Peter Newman. And as Ed reflects on the decision to delay the documentary, the UFO shows up once again, this time while he's in the shower. And this is maybe my favorite sighting that he has. So here's what he says happens.
He's in the shower?
He's in the shower.
Okay, this is going to be fun.
Francis banged on the door. Ed, it's here, hurry. I froze and my heart throbbed. No, come on, no way, I yelled. Out of the shower and through the bathroom, I ran naked. I grabbed a towel as I went through the door into the bedroom. I was dripping wet and really mad. How could this be happening? When I reached the kitchen, Francis was squatting at the edge of the open door. Look out, there it is, get down. I could see the UFO moving slowly from north to south toward the house across the open field. It was the smaller UFO with the transparent energy sheet that I had seen on January 16th. No hum, and the dog was barking like crazy. Damn it, it was back. Why? Why do this to me? I walked straight past Francis through the door and stepped out onto the pool deck. I yelled at the UFO, which was 100 feet or so from our back fence. What the hell do you want? There was a rush of air in my head. Zehas, we are here for you. Damn it, land or get the hell out of my life, I yelled, out of control. It was cold out and I was almost naked, but I didn't feel anything but anger. I raised my hands and said, if you want me, then let's get it over. Zehas, in sleep you know, we are here for you. Bullshit, I'm not going anywhere with you. I raised my voice even louder. Go torment somebody else. Zehas, sleep and know. Instantly the craft winked out. It was gone and I stood there. Suddenly I was cold.
Did he drop his towel?
No, yeah, that's what I'd like to imagine is he, in his astonishment, he drops his towel and then the UFO blinks back into existence and, you know, takes a couple of fun photos of his ding dong.
I think at this point when this is like citing what, 14, I feel like it's a like by just law of averages he was going to be nude during one of them, because if you have that many encounters with aliens, it's going to eventually just fall upon a time when you're either shitting or taking a shower.
Yeah,
you know?
that's very fair. I mean, and there is a like undercurrent of nudity in UFO abduction cases. Like they pop you up there and they take your clothes off. They, you know, grope your nuts, tell you to turn your head and cough.
Yeah. I think that's actually your physical, but I don't know what UFOs or physicals you're going to, but that you should not be getting those two confused.
No. And I'm but I thought that was also a Willy Wonka sort of thing to do. So.
Which part? The turn your head and cough, or
yeah, yeah. So okay. Is that not a part of his like chocolate factory package?
Look, there's probably some novel candy sugar delivery system that's rectal that he's working on.
Yeah, you could get your butthole made out of chocolate. You know the like molds.
Oh yeah, you could be doing that. This is look. I was trying to imagine when would he be doing this, and the only thing I came up with it was that like some other candy company had taken away the children market, so he's trying to appeal to like adults.
Oh yeah, like Candy After Dark.
Yeah, like he finds his niche making like candy novelties for horny adults.
Kids aren't buying candy anymore. Who's gonna buy all the candy? We need adults. We need to get the adult. I don't know if this is what he sounds like, but this is my recollection of Willy
Look,
Wonka.
we can recast. We've got Timothy Chalamet as young Willy Wonka. This will be a much older Willy Wonka, so we can just kind of work out from there.
Can we get Martin Scorsese to play Willy Wonka? Like, I know he doesn't do like a lot of like acting.
He's not normally a leading man, but we'll see if we can get him to go for it.
I would love to see that.
Hey, Marty.
Hey,
do
Marty.
you want to play Willy Wonka, but for like a sex chocolate
It's like,
factory?
Hey, Marty, it's like a
not
sort of
porn.
sex
This
You're
is a
gonna be
serious
like
film.
pouring chocolate into like people's assholes to make molds out of them.
But it's tasteful. It's not.
Yeah. You on board for this, Marty? I mean, we could add like a whole mob angle to this if we have to, because you're so into that.
Look, if here's the thing, if I don't say this and Jules ever listens to this podcast, I'll never hear the end of it. He's made like 4 mobster movies out of like 40 films.
Jules knows I'm joking.
Oh,
I hope. Because if not, she's coming to get me right now.
It has to be said. So yeah, go watch Silence. It's fucking incredible. However, what were we talking about? He
goes out in the towel. To yell at the UFO. Now, what I love about this brief encounter is that while he's shouting at the UFO, Ed's wife, Frances, is standing nearby taking photos. And amazingly, she captures a photo where you see a UFO hovering in the sky, and Ed is standing beneath it, back to the camera, wearing nothing but a towel. One of his hands at his hip holding the towel, and then his other hand is like raised in anger, presumably shaking at the UFO, as he told it off for disrupting his evening. It's an amazing photo, and I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah, I do have to see that. That sounds, frankly, like a real life Far Side cartoon, and I'm
really
very excited.
Yeah. So the next few days, things aren't as exciting in the UFO department. The filming of the TV documentary comes and goes. On-air reporter Mark Curtis was reportedly super hyped to be involved in the story, calling it, quote, the most well-documented UFO sighting of all time. And the program covers not just Ed's story and photographs, but also the sightings that poured in during the subsequent flap. Ed then finds himself receiving letters that are routed through the Sentinel, some of which are different investigators from across the country, while others are offering to write his story. Remember, at this point, Ed is still mostly anonymous, and his concern with a book deal is this would require breaking that anonymity. I got it in one this time.
You got it. Congratulations. I wish I had a musical cue for this.
Dude, yeah. We'll have to add like soundboards and musical cues and all kinds of fun stuff to the show real soon.
What episode number do we have to start putting a soundboard in? I feel like
420 has to be like the episode where we just fuck everything up for an hour and a half, you know?
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So in continuing his dialogue with investigators, Ed is once again given the suggestion to try out hypnotic regression. And it turns out prominent ufologist Bud Hopkins was coming to town to do some investigating of his own. And Hopkins also had his own like hypnosis techniques, I guess. So Ed decides he will take a chance on Hopkins, but before he's able to undergo hypnotic regression, on February 7th, 1988, he has sighting 15.
Fantastic.
Frances had gone outside to feed their dog Crystal when a blue beam suddenly shot down from the sky in front of her. She describes leaves and bits of gravel swirling around within the beam, and she looks up and sees the UFO, then screams for Ed. And Ed comes charging towards her, carrying his camera. He's running through the house. However, the beam shoots back down at the exit of the house, which prevents Ed from getting to her and from Frances from getting into the house. But eventually, at some point, Frances is able to like run through the doorway, like past the beam. and get into the house, and Ed promptly locks the doors, grabs the kids, and they like crawl around the house because I guess they're not sure if the beam can reach them through the windows. And eventually Ed corrals the whole family out front into the truck to hide. And while they're sitting there in the truck, Ed feels the hum again, and that familiar in his voice that says, "Do not deny us. We are here. Remember." And after some time, the humming fades, and then there's no sign of the UFO. The next day, Ed finally meets up with Bud Hopkins to discuss his case. Hopkins had been coming to the area, I guess, to visit nearby family members who had been connected to a different UFO abduction case, which I wish I knew more about what that was, because, yeah, Bud Hopkins just was like, "Oh, there's another abduction in the area, and, since I'm here, I might as well stop by."
Honestly, it's just very polite for our boy Ed to have a fresh UFO sighting right the night before he goes and meets Bud Hopkins. Like, you got to bring something new to the table, Yeah,
it's very weird the convenient ways the UFOs do and do not show up for Ed.
Yeah.
So strangely enough, when Ed recounts all the details of his UFO encounters, Bud Hopkins basically concludes that he didn't experience missing time during these events, and so they're thinking he did not get abducted. However, Bud Hopkins is like sort of prompting him and saying like, "Well, are there previous experiences in your life that could maybe be, this or that?" And this causes Ed to sort of, think on his past, and he begins to recollect some memories of like missing time that he thinks may have be linked to UFO experiences from when he was younger. Now, here's where things start to fall apart. The day after he's hanging out with Bud Hopkins, and like in his book, he's starting to think about, oh, do I have UFO experiences in the past that I'm like not currently aware of? He starts to find out that his legitimacy is starting to be very seriously questioned. And
I mean, he's reported 15 sightings. Like,
well, okay.
Yeah.
He has anonymously reported a handful and recently come out. And so, like, remember, not all of these experiences are out in the media yet.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
But this is like the complete recounting of all of them from his perspective. And a lot of, and this, I mean, eventually this stuff would like go into like MUFON has, I think, almost all of it at this point. And of course, eventually, he has a book where he tells everything. But at the moment, it's like it's not like he's like got 15 stories of like aliens shooting blue beams and beaming images of dogs into his head. That stuff was all left out initially. So here's another little note. You can pull the Center for UFO Studies out of your back pocket because I want to mention here that CUFOs was one of the organizations that really doubted Ed's story.
Okay.
And I'm guessing that's one reason they don't show up in his book very much. They do show up again later, but in a pretty negative light.
I was going to say, he didn't even put him in there as a hater. Like,
well,
that's one of my favorite things about some of the conspiracy books that I've read, especially the one from the Mars people, is they just will like tear into people for like a paragraph or two at a time, people that have doubted them or whatever. And I think it's so fucking funny.
Yeah. He there's a couple of moments where the Walters are sort of expressing their disdain for people criticizing their story. So on the 10th, Bob Reed comes by with a camera. Bob Reed from MUFON. He comes by with a camera that he wants Ed to use. And I don't, it's called a Nimslo 3D. And they have this camera. It's like super official, I guess. It's set up so that like, no matter what you do, you can't really tamper with it, supposedly. Like you can, it will always preserve a negative. And if you try to like open it and tamper with like the frames and stuff, it will like it'll be like obvious that it got messed with. And that's the setup that they're trying to give him, because MUFON wants Ed to provide a picture using this camera of the UFOs, or else his credibility will be called into check, because obviously everybody's just having to take him on faith that he's capturing legitimate photos of UFOs.
Yeah.
But he tells him, okay, I'm going to use the camera and get a picture of a UFO with this thing. And days pass, and according to Ed, the UFOs are not visiting him, so he can't take any photos of them.
So this is when he just happens to not have UFO encounters, because now he needs to try to give evidence. Yeah, that's okay. This works really well. They're
starting to show up less often, or this is the beginning of when they show up less often. So there's a lot of stuff that happens here. This is like a portion of the story that gets a little less interesting, but I'll try and cover the main beats. So Charles Flanagan, who is like he's a an official polygraph tester, puts Ed through a polygraph exam. Or rather, he doesn't put him through it. He is like the guy who's selected to conduct this polygraph.
Mm-hmm.
Ed happens to just accidentally miss this appointment. He forgot about it, or maybe he just like didn't write it down.
His alarm didn't go off.
Yeah, he slept through it, but instead Ed pays a guy named Harvey McLaughlin Jr., who is another polygraph tester, who's like outside that area, to give him a lie detector test. And they conduct 2 tests with Ed, and Ed is basically cleared. They're like, I have a portion of the report here from McLaughlin, and it says, following 2 separate multiple chart specific issue examinations, there were no specific physiological reactions of a deceptive nature noted to any of the reviewed test questions. General areas of questioning followed as, did you lie or falsify the information you have furnished me concerning the UFOs you have seen? Did you in any way falsify or lie about the photographs you have presented concerning these UFOs, etc., etc.? With the information that is present at this time furnished by the examinee, no consistent deceptive responses are seen. So a guy that he paid, instead of doing the other appointment that gets set up for him, gives him a pass.
Yeah, this is the equivalent of you only using your own camera to take your UFO pictures.
Which and the thing is, stuff like this is why there are still people to this day who believe Ed Walters' claims. Like, oh, he went through this lie detector test. Like, it's one of those things. Yeah.
I still see that with so many people online for UFO stuff, ghost, like all of the things that we research. There are people who still are like, he passed a lie detector test. He's telling them the truth. And it's like, no, that's not how this works. That's not what like the polygraph is not that it's not good.
Yeah, it's just we're at the point of this where like everything just is going to fall apart more and more and more. Now there's another guy, Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who is an optical physicist, but importantly also a ufologist.
Fantastic.
He has come in to begin examining Ed's photos. He's knowledgeable about photography though, but he is a very prominent ufologist at the time. And one of the people who would be like heavily skeptical and commenting on the whole fucking Gulf Breeze affair is Philip Klass, who was, I believe, like a journalist, but he also was a skeptical like UFO researcher. And he had this to say about Dr. Bruce Maccabee. He says, quote, Maccabee, in my opinion, is one of the nation's most technically competent and hardworking pro-UFO investigators, but regrettably, one of the most credulous. which is funny. I mean, like Bud Hopkins is another guy who I see the word credulous thrown around a lot with him. So a lot of the people who are in Ed Walters' camp are all very inclined to believe in things that support the UFO side of these cases. But apparently Maccabee is like skilled and like knows his shit, technically speaking, but is very, very UFO oriented. Not exactly able to. Yeah, definitely not that. So he spends a night looking at the pictures and talking with Ed, and decides that he wants to take on the case. And interestingly, like while the opinion of Maccabee from people like Class is that they're like, very credulous, I guess Maccabee sort of initially has some doubts, but is still interested. There's a weird moment where Maccabee and Charles Flanagan, who I believe is from MUFON, they show up one day, a few days later, at Ed's door, and they have photographs of a UFO. It's the same UFO that Ed's seen. Okay. And apparently this was like, Ed starts getting really excited, but he's also super confused because he's like, how in the world did you also get a photo of the UFO? Or I'm sorry, I have it flipped. It's not the same UFO. It's a different UFO.
Okay.
And they're showing it to him. There's another thing with a similar UFO that I got things turned around in my head. Sorry. It's a different UFO, but Ed is still just like, oh my God, how did you get a photo of a UFO? That's crazy. This is when
weirdest thing this guy said. How did you does he think he's the only one who can get UFO photos?
Well, he's just like, it's so I think it's just that I don't know. I think he's just basically, I don't have a lot of read on what he feels about it. I think it's just that he is he's felt so privileged with the UFO photos he's been able to take, and how difficult it's been to get anybody else to see it, supposedly. That he's just like, oh my God, there's other photos out there. But this is when Maccabee tells him, actually, this picture that I'm showing you is a double exposure trick. And we did it using the camera that you used to use. So basically they're telling him, this is one of the big things that gets brought up in the Ed Walters case, is his camera is very much capable of double exposure, and that can pretty easily be used to create fraudulent UFOs and paranormal stuff too. Now, it's funny because I guess Maccabee and Walters would work together for years. But Maccabee, the way he interprets Ed it's not very charitable.
Okay.
Because he basically is I think he thinks that Ed is not smart enough to create the hoax. He just straight up is
he's too dumb to pull it off.
Yeah, okay. He's straight up just his because he freaked out at the UFO photograph we showed him that was our personal hoax. I don't think he would it seemed authentic to me. I don't think he would know how to do this. I think he's not very bright and just couldn't. And so he must be telling the truth because he wouldn't know how to create a fake.
See, earlier I thought the way that he was trying to get it past people was this guy. Look, if someone were to make this up, they wouldn't do this many encounters.
Yeah.
The gall of it,
but
instead he's going to go with the "I'm too stupid" defense. I got it. I like it.
Well, this is what Maccabee seems to think of him. I don't think Ed would call himself stupid, but yeah, and that is another another thing that gets pointed out later by some of the skeptics looking at this case, which is that basically people who claim to have more than one encounter with specific UFOs are pretty much always revealed to be hoaxes. It's just too it's too much. It's too much to believe.
Yeah, you're making yourself a cosmic level main character if you have 15 UFO encounters.
Yes. So it's been over 2 weeks since Ed has gotten the special camera that MUFON wants him to take the picture of. And on February 26th, Ed and Francis go out to a nearby park to try and get a photo of the UFO, hoping that it would appear there. And they don't really notice anything for a while. And then suddenly there are these distant lights. And Ed and Francis kind of disagree about like where the lights are, because Ed thinks that they're distant and suggesting that the object is very large. But Francis is like, no, these are actually closer and the object is small. But most importantly, this is a cigar-shaped object that they see. And Ed interprets the rows of lights on this thing as like portholes. And he ends up taking photographs of it with MUFON's special camera. And a couple days later, the camera is taken. They develop the images, and sure enough, there is this cigar-shaped UFO in the photo. And investigators from MUFON, generally speaking, are like super stoked. They're like, "Oh shit, he did it with our super special camera. This is starting to look real." Now, it is interesting that this is a very different kind of UFO than what Ed had been able to capture so many times before, but nonetheless, it was a UFO. So
the funniest thing would be if he had been faking it up until this point, and then this one just happened to be real. That would be the actual best twist ending to this story that I could think of, I think.
There is something sort of like that in this story, but we'll get to it. Okay. So where was I? So, the Sentinel would end up, of course, reporting on like MUFON's findings and the photos and stuff. It would hit the media. And apparently people were like, MUFON especially, are concluding that like, well, there's no opportunity to hoax with this camera. So like you can't produce double exposures. So like, why aren't we fucking closing the books on this one, guys? Now, here's the important thing to note. Nobody saw Ed take the photograph except Francis, right? So like, we don't know the conditions there. There could have been other ways to hoax things. And while you can't tamper with this camera, you could theoretically take a picture of a model that was like hung up in the air from a ways away.
Yeah, like all this is confirmed. Like I think I said last episode is that whatever is in the picture was present when the photo was taken.
Yeah,
that's all you got.
Yeah, and like I don't know whose like calculations these are, but somebody would later like analyze the photo, and it would suggest that the UFO that, and this might be why Ed and Francis sort of have their debate about the distance to kind of confuse it, because the calculations on like distance from the photograph would suggest that this UFO was like 2.5 feet, which would be could be the size of a model.
A very also what is this, UFO for ants?
Yeah. So, but nonetheless, MUFON is like, we fucking got it, boys. Let's take this shit home. We have an authentic UFO case. Now, Ed is growing concerned about the accusations of double exposures, and he's like, okay, I'm going to buy a new camera. And instead of buying a 35 millimeter where his images, like, you could basically analyze them and the double exposure is still possible, he decides to purchase a Polaroid that would immediately eject pictures. You know the kind that I'm talking about. Like if you remember Polaroid cameras, these cameras would just like immediately like print out the photo.
It's the thing Instagram's based on.
Yes. Now here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Do you remember when it used to be like the icon used to be even more just like it was just a camera?
I do remember that actually, and it was like ugly and brown as shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good times.
Anyway,
here's the thing, and Ed, I think, just didn't know this. It is still possible to produce a double exposure with that type of camera. It's maybe a little harder, but it is still possible.
Okay.
Or maybe he did know, or who knows. But you can still do it with that camera. So it's still like he's not using something that is concretely like you can't fake with double exposure. Now he waits for a little bit for the UFOs to show up again, and on March 8th, the day after he purchases this new camera, he has another sighting, and he takes a photo of the UFO. And this one's not super notable, except that in this one, it is the same sort of cigar-shaped UFO, and there are like these streaks on the UFO that seem to suggest like rapid motion.
Oh, okay. I thought it was going to suggest like cool decals.
Those two. Yeah, they had a if you can read this or my what's a funny thing that an alien would have on it?
My other UFO is a cigar.
Yeah. My Bichon Frise is smarter than your honor student.
Yeah, there you go. Good pull, the Bichon Frise. That's not a dog breed I hear all the time.
So, yeah, I like obscure dog breeds. So Ed hits up Dr. Maccabee and he's like, dude, dude, you're getting Adele, and I got some sick new photos with my new camera. And Maccabee, so they're not going to publish these images. Like Ed doesn't really want to publish these for whatever reason. And so Dr. Maccabee tells him, why don't you get a second camera and have a stereo camera set up to get photos of the UFO? Which I guess would just like lend more legitimacy.
Yeah, you get it from two angles.
I can see that. Yeah.
Good coverage.
So he gets another camera from Dwayne Cook and sets up a system for a stereo camera. And so Ed's going to try out a stereo camera setup for his next experience. And, he's once again out for multiple days with this new camera and doesn't see anything. And then on the 17th, he is invited by Dwayne Cook to go UFO watching with Cook and I believe his family and maybe some other locals. And after he hangs up the phone from talking with Dwayne, he begins to feel the humming, the buzzing in his head. And so he's like thinking to himself that this is going to be a good night to go out and try and take a picture of the UFO.
These UFOs just like to get in his way when he has plans.
Yeah.
Like if this guy has no social life, he sees no UFOs.
Yeah. He's too busy UFO hunting to really, get out there and mingle. Not that his wife would really want him to. Mingle's maybe the wrong word.
Yeah, I mean, but like you can look. He never goes out on the town.
It's true.
I think he could go to the fucking Dave and Buster's.
I mean, why would you? But why would you go to Dave and Buster's if you could just get zapped by a UFO at any time? You know.
I mean, true. Like, look, Time Crisis is fun. I might personally take that over being abducted by a UFO, but to each their own. If you want to go up into space, then go for that.
Yeah. No. I and thank you for saying so. So
I'll be playing the massive Flappy Bird machine or some shit.
Gee, is that a thing?
I don't know. They are now making like phone apps, and now I
yeah.
did use. Why did I use the one phone game that has been like
Dead
famously removed from the App Store
for a long time? Yeah.
Took away the phone app and just got the arcade version. All right.
So Ed and the cooks and some other locals show up for the UFO watch, and he like kind of demonstrates his camera setup to like show like, hey, I'm gonna use this weird setup to try and get photos of the UFO. And people wait around for a while, and then by 10 p.m. it's cold and everybody's tired, and basically everybody's like, all right, we're done. And Ed and Francis stay behind, hoping that the UFO appears. Now, of course, as soon as everybody leaves, Ed feels the humming in his mind. And here's what he says happened next. About 4 minutes later, I glanced southwest and saw the UFO wink in. I jumped for the camera and turned the tripod control handle. My heart was pounding and my legs suddenly felt weak. I kept saying, there it is, there it is. I fumbled for the shutter buttons and shot the photographs. The double flashes lit up the trees in front of the camera. When I looked up, the UFO was still there for a few more seconds, then it winked out. The time was 10:10 p.m. The whole sighting had lasted only about 10 seconds. I dashed down the path between the trees to the parking lot to use my truck headlights to view the photographs. As I emerged from the trees, I saw Dwayne and Dari in their car, which I think Dari is Dwayne's wife, in their car and waved at them to come over. I hurried to the front of the truck to hold the pictures in the beam from the headlights. The UFO was still developing on the film as we all huddled around in silence. Then, in a burst of exhilaration, there were people I didn't know running around us saying, oh no, I can't believe I missed it.
So this guy, I for some reason just assumed he got like two like tripods or something and had them both, would set them both up and like hit. No, this guy's just like double fisting Polaroid cameras and taking pictures like two-handed. Is that what he's doing?
I think he does have like a setup for like, I'm trying to see if I wrote that down. I think he does, because like I know he like has to shield the camera. Okay. And he's like using plywood to shield it. So I'm assuming he has some sort of tripod setup. I don't think he's just like holding two cameras.
He's like playing Edward 40 hands with two Polaroids. Yeah. Like, okay, all right. So he does have some.
You have to get 30 UFO photos before we take the cameras off your
duct
hands.
Tape off. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, of course, this photo of a UFO is again considered to be great evidence, but again, he is alone with Francis when he takes it. Like everybody has just left, and it's fucking crazy because people are. It's like 10 minutes. They haven't even left the parking lot, and he suddenly has a photo of a UFO.
Yeah, look, they're on call. This guy can get these UFO photos whenever he wants.
And like nobody in the parking lot sees anything, right? Like he is the only one who sees it. And there's like another witness named Brenda Pollock, who was, I guess, driving towards the park around that same time. And she does put in a report that she saw a UFO driving home from Pensacola. And she describes that it went southwest over Gulf Breeze. But again, think about this. Ed Walters describes the thing winking in and out in like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And he also talks about it coming from the southwest. And Brenda talks about a totally different direction. So people take this woman's report which, by the way, that's still an ongoing thing, is there are reports coming in from people in around the area of UFOs constantly. And a lot of the times they act as like buffers for whatever sighting Ed Walters claims to have had.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't add up. But for people who believe in Ed Walters' case, her sighting around the same time is proof.
Yeah. So yeah, they take that as a second sighting of the same thing, and just so it lends credibility. Okay. Yeah. I can see that. I like. That's always going to happen. Like just trying to clump them together so that yours seems more likely. But it's they don't quite line up here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now, interestingly, Dr. Maccabee would actually analyze the stereo images that Ed captured with the stereo setup. And here's what he says. Using the same method that I used on the test photos and assuming that the divergence of the lens axes was still about 0.6 of a degree on March 17th, I found that the distance to the object was over 3,000 feet. Unfortunately, the cameras were not rigidly mounted to the supporting board, so they could so there's a thing there. So they could have twisted slightly when Ed carried the camera to a shoreline park, and this would have changed the divergence slightly. A calculation based on the unlikely assumption that the lens axes were exactly parallel yielded a distance of 180 feet. Assuming that handling made only slight changes in the camera orientations, the divergence was probably between 0 and 0.6 degrees on March 17th, and therefore the distance would have been between 180 and 3,000 feet. I could not be sure exactly how far away the object was, but the distance was sizable. The width of the image on the film corresponds to an object width of about 4.8 feet at 200 feet and to a proportionally greater width at a greater distance. For example, 7.2 feet at 300 feet.
So he's really trying to cover all the possibilities here.
Yeah.
It can be anything from 150 to 3,000 feet away and can be all sorts of different sizes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, pretty big.
But the farther away it gets, the bigger it gets. Because
Yeah.
you see, I'm with it.
So on March 20th, Ed again hears the voice call out to him in his mind, calling him Zehas. He's like in the bathroom brushing his teeth. So this time not nude in the shower, but doing some other bathroomly activities. That's what I call them. He has his like stereo cameras set up in the backyard, and so he runs outside. And the same UFO that he saw on the 17th appears again. And Ed basically, so he takes pictures, but does not record both of the images at the same time, which is what the point of the setup is.
Yeah.
And only a few seconds
so
after.
Yet again, you can't take keeps finding ways to make himself less credible in these situations.
Yeah. And only a few seconds after he takes the photos, the UFO disappears. And Ed says this of these photos, quote, I can only conclude that the beings aboard the craft knew the importance of the photos and wanted the investigators to have the best photographic proof they could. Now, this is something that he said before. He says this multiple times where he's like, I think one of the reasons they let me photograph them is because these photos are important and they want investigators to see them. It sort of makes you wonder why the UFOs don't just appear to the investigators as well.
Yeah, that's yet again, they're appearing just for this one guy.
Special little boy.
Is getting, it's... yeah, okay.
Yeah. There's another attempt at stereo camera photography stuff. I don't need to read the boring details, but essentially there's like some weird anomalies that make it difficult to, there's errors. And the analysis is just not helpful. And so there's like another UFO photo that's out there, but Dr. Maccabee's just like, it could be in this range and it could be this size or it couldn't be. We don't know. And so there's all these, he keeps trying to get these photos. And while this is all going on, skeptics are getting louder.
Of course.
And Bob Boyd, who is an investigator from the Center for UFOs, for CUFOs, was pretty vocal about criticizing the images. And it just so happened that Boyd was a MUFON investigator for Alabama, the Alabama chapter of MUFON. And here's another angle to this that gets out of control. Boyd also kind of comes out to say that he feels that investigators from MUFON had gotten a little too close to this case and were not really handling it properly anymore.
Look, what did they call? I don't know. There's some term when you go undercover and you you start going with like the people you're supposed to be following and everything. Like yeah, but there's a term when you start to like sympathize. It's like Stockholm syndrome or some shit, but not. It's the undercover version. Anyway, yeah. So he was doing that. All right.
Yeah.
MUFON has lost objectivity in the Ed Walters case.
Yeah, a bit. And it's funny because like I read a little anecdote here that I guess CUFOs had an event in 1970 that must have stung them pretty hard because UFO groups in that they were like working with were presenting images that were authentic or labeled as authentic, but skeptics had intentionally hoaxed the images to prove a point. And so I think maybe that's where CUFOs is like why they have a bit more of a skeptical lean to their whole shtick,
because they just got made to look like fools.
Yeah,
like that's what happened. Okay, that's interesting. I guess I've never really thought about if there's a time where people got intentionally falsified photos and stuff displayed by organizations.
I feel like I've read about that before, and there's like an entire story behind that, but I don't remember. My bad. But I'm pretty sure that that's a thing I've read about before.
Hell yeah.
So Ray Stanford, who came up many years ago because he was one of the investigators of the Lonnie Zamora UFO case in New Mexico. He's studying the photographs and finding anomalies in them that were, just weird inconsistencies. And this is when the CUFOs organization put out a bulletin titled Gulf Breeze, The Other Side of the Coin, which in short suggests that the whole case was probably a hoax. And this pisses the Walters family off. And here is also where in the book Ed just kind of like has a good like Ed refers to CUFOs as a group of just like fucking debunkers. Mm-hmm. And it's really silly. MUFON responds to CUFOs as well, and kind of gives them a backlash. These two groups kind of fought back and forth over this case. There's actually a lot of this case from the late 80s to the early 90s is believers and people who think it's a hoax fighting back and forth. Now, March 20th, more shit goes down. A witness...
UFO stuff or...
No.
Okay.
So, there's this weird thing in the story of Ed Walters and the Walters family where I guess they host a lot of parties, which I think are connected to their son having like local teenagers over. But the thing is like when you read about it online, they don't make that connection. Like a lot of articles will be like, yeah, Ed Walters, he has these parties and local teens come to them. And I'm like, that is weird. I think
is he like just, so either their parties with his son,
or he's close with the local teens, which I don't
or
think
he's just the adult that buys them kegs and shit.
Like I don't know what the deal is with that, but like none of the places where I read about this were people saying like, yeah, he has these teens over because they're friends of his sons, and his son's like, I think 19 at the time, 18 or 19 when this is all going down. So I don't know what's going there, but here's where some teenagers get involved. One teenager named Nick Mock shows up and he comes out to basically say, to tell the media that Ed had on an occasion produced a quote unquote ghost photograph at a party, and it was done through double exposure. which of course.
So now we have that he has done this before. Fantastic.
Yeah, and Ed, of course, like he's denied that he even knows how to do a double exposure to move on and other people. And even worse, Nick says that Ed had recently been talking about how he wants to do the quote unquote ultimate prank. And so Nick had like come through one of Bob Boyd's sources, and they managed to convince Nick to come through and give an interview to the investigators that Bob Boyd was working with, one of the more skeptical people. Mm-hmm. And Nick basically gives out a list of teenagers that would attend these parties, so that Don Ware from MUFON could like follow up on it. And weirdly enough, instead of going and interviewing these like local teenagers who were supposedly at these parties where Ed would like show double exposures, Don Ware just goes directly to Ed and asks him about it. And Ed, of course, just denies it. He's just like, no, yeah. He says that there is a quote unquote ghost photograph, but both Ed and Francis say that, we took that in 1985 and we don't know what happened. It just like mysteriously appeared in there. And then Ed says this about the teenager Nick. And this is what Ed says about Nick after all his shit starts coming out. Quote, okay. This boy had been banished from our home and parties because of undesirable behavior, which he refused to change. And he claims that Ed claims that Nick had been charged with vandalizing his son's car. And even weirder, Walt Andrus from MUFON, the director at the time, would also eventually later like step in and like try and counter Nick's accusations. Andrus even at one point implies that Nick has a criminal record. He says, quote, investigators would then like dig into that and they would find, quote, he has no criminal record and there's no proof that he did any of the things he was accused of during the course of the investigation. Damaging Danny's car, writing hate mail, using drugs, being a bad influence. All things that he's accused of by like Ed and like implied by Andrus, and investigators would look into it and be like, no, that didn't happen.
So all of these people are just like defaming this teen.
Yes. Yes. It's fucking crazy. So instead of like Ed doesn't like actually like respond to the accusations really, he just does everything he can to smear Nick. And like he's also close with a lot of the like MUFON investigators who are like on his side, and they kind of like together make this evidence seem that this like counter evidence to his credibility diminish a bit.
Wow. All right.
So yeah.
This is when you're trying to fucking like ruin a teenager, I think you might have gone too far.
Yeah.
I'll just go with that.
It's a bit much. Now remember, Walt Andrus would eventually release an article in 88 or 89 where he refers to the Gulf Breeze case as the quote most significant case in UFO history. He's all in on it. Now, here's the thing. People working within MUFON, obviously there's a bunch of investigators who are on Ed's side, and he has like this inner circle of people who believe him. But Bob Boyd and others in MUFON are also concerned. Like, he's not the only one who's just like, hey, what the fuck are we doing here? And so Ed would often respond to criticism that would come out in the media and reports by skeptics, all of which Ed would basically dismiss as debunker controversy. In fact, a big chunk of the book is dedicated to denying debunkers, critics, and skeptics. And people were really starting to question the story by mid-March of 1988.
How many chapters does he devote to like yelling at his haters?
I didn't count, but it's gotta be at least 3 or 4.
Wow. Fantastic.
So, Ed and Francis are trying to answer back to these skeptics and quote unquote debunkers during April. But during that basically entire month, there's no UFO visitation. And Ed's thinking, oh, maybe they're finally going to leave me alone. But then late April rolls around, and using the new camera setup, he captures another one of the cigar-shaped UFOs. And so he's like, okay, they're still here. And they start going back out to the park to try and get photos of UFOs again. And then on May 1st, 1988, Ed Walters has his quote-unquote final close encounter with the UFO.
Now, is it actually final, or is it like the Eagles' final tour, where they just kept going for like 30 years?
It's not a true final, but it's final for this like arc. So Dr. Maccabee had like kind of shown him how to improve the stereo camera setup, and he takes it out to the park. And Ed's chilling there, but nothing's really happening. He starts to get frustrated. And according to him, he yells for the UFO to end the whole thing. And when he does this, the UFO appears. And here's what Ed says happens. My attention was mostly toward the right, to the area in the southwest where the UFO had winked in on March 17th. But as I turned my head to the left, there it was. The glow from the bottom was intense, and the small top light was again clear. The midsection was much darker, but I could still see several small lights around the middle. I took a quick breath to steady myself and swung the tripod around to aim the SRS camera toward the UFO. I fired the shutter buttons and took two photos, and when I looked back up, the craft was still there, but off to the right and a little bit higher was another array of lights. It looked very similar to the object I had photographed with the MUFON camera. In a fraction of a second, my eyes caught the glow of the UFO about 35 feet above me. I flinched and my right hand squeezed the shutter button, resulting in another photo. Then, with the UFO just above the small oak tree, my eyes went completely white, just as if a flash cube had gone off in my brain. The next instant, I was lifting my face and chest up off the sand at the edge of the water. My head pounded, and as I tried to stand, I stumbled in dizziness. I checked my watch and couldn't believe the time. It was 2:25 a.m. What had happened in the hour and 15 minutes between taking the photographs and finding myself on the beach?
He finally has some missing time.
Yeah. Yeah, he has another set of photographs that he can show Dr. Maccabee, but the important thing is here, he may have been abducted.
Wow.
And here's the other weird thing.
We got him, boys.
Yeah.
We finally got him.
Here's the other weird thing.
Okay.
Ed seems to think that whatever device that had been set up in his head to cause the humming and buzzing had been removed.
Oh, it's gone, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fantastic.
And
that's such a fun coincidence.
Yes. And so after it is taken out of his whatever, the UFO experiences stop. And this is like the sort of end of the official visitation. But from here, this is when organizations and media and other researchers would start to just like continue to analyze and criticize and try and uncover different things about the story. Ed's book basically ends here with the final sighting. The very ending portion, and it's funny when you find out, but the ending portion is dedicated to reports by Dr. Maccabee about the photos, but the analysis it's not especially interesting to read about, and I'm not going to read it here. It's not worth our time. But a lot of what follows after Ed's coverage of the story officially ends is bandying about between people who are pro Ed Walters, which was like certain people in MUFON, like a big portion of MUFON, Dr. Maccabee, obviously MUFON's director, and then people who are skeptical and frankly raising good points about how suspicious all the so-called evidence looks. Now, I'm going to skip over a lot of the back and forth here because not a lot of it is super interesting. However, I took out a couple tidbits that I thought were pretty interesting. And one of the more revealing tidbits were claims that were later made by one of the writers attached to the Gulf Breeze Sentinel, which was the de facto main collector of these UFO reports at the time. So Kimberly Blair worked at the Sentinel. She started working at the Sentinel just after Ed had begun submitting photographs to the paper. And she, in the Pensacola Independent Weekly, she kind of, in July 8th, 1999, she comes out with some statements about the situation that are very interesting. So she basically says that she had a friend of hers at the newspaper named Diane Hansen, who started to kind of openly question the UFO reports that were getting published. But, quote, when she spoke out, she got harassing, even threatening phone calls. So fearing for her safety and her children's, she went silent. And Kimberly says this about these sightings, quote, I could not chase away the nagging question, how was it possible for a UFO the size and proportion Walters claimed to drop from the sky and hover over his house without dozens, if not hundreds of even thousands of people seeing it? Our geography, surrounded on water on three sides, bordered by two bridges that give drivers a bird's eye view of Gulf Breeze, makes that impossible.
Yeah, that's kind of a good point.
Yeah. Now, as for the Sentinel and their investigation into the case, Blair was basically upset that there was no investigation of any of the reports or anything that Walters had presented to the paper. And here's what she says about the Sentinel. And we became a propaganda machine for Walters' story in the book he later published. The paper played a big role in perpetuating the illusion. It became clear that there was no newspaper investigation or any real desire to reveal the truth of what was happening in Gulf Breeze. One of the most significant clues was in Walters himself. Here was a man who said he was being stalked by aliens who were trying to suck him up in a blue beam. Yet nearly every day, he bebopped into the Sentinel with a smile like a Cheshire cat's as he headed for Cook's office. Never did I pick up fear or concern. Walters' behavior raised the bar on my suspicions, especially when so many people were gripped by the fear of his claims, everyone except Walters, that is.
So he's coming in like a fucking cartoon, like Cuphead whistling into the office, and everyone's like, "Oh, I'm so scared for this man. He's going to get taken by the UFOs."
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And again, MUFON is like the eye of the storm here. Like MUFON is the center for so much of the media blitz surrounding this. You know, a lot of them are releasing statements, and MUFON is also like backing the credibility of Ed Walters. Now there were people, like I said, who were skeptical. There were two members, Richard Hall and Dr. Willie Smith, who were kind of saying, they were suggesting that the publicity and this media circus that sort of popped up around all this influenced decisions that investigators at MUFON would make. And here's something from an article written by Richard Hall and Dr. Willie Smith that backs that up. Until independent photoanalysis work is completed and reported, the supposedly supporting evidence systematically analyzed, and the central questions answered, skepticism about Gulf Breeze is entirely justified. Unfortunately, Ed and his wife now are publishing a book. They're receiving the help and cooperation of Donald Ware, Bud Hopkins, and Bruce Maccabee, whose minds appear to be made up. Although they are close to the case and may be right in their judgment, this approach departs drastically from long-established scientific procedure, including published MUFON procedure. It is all the more reason for careful, continued outside investigation and analysis of the key aspects of the case, including the integrity and motivation of the main witness. Now, the book was a big deal. I read it.
Yeah.
And
did you love it? What'd you put it on?
It's
did you
kind
log
of
it
fun.
On Goodreads?
I didn't do that. It's kind of fun. Here's a little interesting note about it, though. Ed was given a $200,000 check to write it.
I mean, yeah, that's what you do if you're getting a publishing deal, unless it was self-published. But it sounds like he made some good money on it. All right.
Yeah. And other people seem to maybe be in on it for whatever reasons. And it's sort of interpreted that maybe, like, I see it as maybe MUFON are like thinking maybe they can benefit financially, but they can also share in this big media explosion about the case. And so a lot of it seems to maybe boil down to money. Now, here's another fucking weird thing. In 1989, Marge Christensen, who was then director of public relations for MUFON, was forced to resign from her position. According to Marge, this happened shortly after the publication of that was the skeptical publication by Smith and Hall. And she says this: "At that time, I voiced similar objections to both Walt Andrus and Don Ware to no avail. Both of them responded that they felt that these sightings were proof of extraterrestrial visitation. They accused me of being too conservative, and Walt Andrus then announced the appointment of a new director of public relations to replace me." So she got axed because she did not support the Ed Walters Gulf Breeze UFO case. Now, certain doubters within MUFON would continue to publish their skeptical articles. I think even Dr. Willie Smith would recreate hoax photographs that were similar to what Ed would capture on camera, but then Dr. Maccabee would write counter articles in support of the evidence. And that last chapter of Maccabee's reports on the analysis of the photographs, I guess he received like a 10% cut on the books, on the book deal to write that chapter in there.
Oh man.
Yeah. So
this is everyone's getting paid.
Everybody's getting cash money moolah.
Wow.
So the public attention had been too much for the Walters family, and by the fall of 1988, they had moved houses. Ed's house was put up for sale and bought in 1989 by Robert and Sarah Menzer, who didn't know anything about the events of 1987 to 1988 with the UFOs. And when Mr. Menzer decided he wanted to go hook up the ice maker for the refrigerator, he noticed that the line was crimped and coming out of the wall. He figured that the shutoff valve for this line was probably located in the attic of the house, and so he begins to trace the line to go shut it off so that he can work on this. And as he removes some insulation in the attic, he finds something weird in there. He finds a 9-inch model of a UFO hidden underneath the insulation.
Okay, so I was assuming it would be a little bigger than that, but that is a very small UFO model. Holy shit. Okay. So this guy just like hit it. Why didn't he just destroy it?
Well, he doesn't know what it is. Like, he's like, oh, that's weird. That's here. Like, he doesn't know.
No, why didn't Ed destroy it?
I don't know. Well, I mean, if you ask Ed, he didn't put it there.
Well, true. But hey Ed, let's cut the shit for a second. Why didn't you destroy this thing?
I don't know. I mean, maybe he needed to use it again. Maybe he was, he was running out of paper plates, and he really needed to, reduce, reuse, recycle. Who knows? But the Mr. Menzer, like, he doesn't know what this is. He doesn't know about the UFO shit, and he just doesn't think anything of it. Then in June 1990, Craig Myers of the Pensacola News-Journal, who had been researching the case for a while, decided that he wanted to investigate the case sort of from the hoax angle. Serendipitously, he decided to visit the house of the Walters, the old house of the Walters family, on a hunch that maybe something had been left behind that could help with his research. If you want to read his full story and his research into the Gulf Breeze UFO, he has a book called War of the Words, The True But Strange Story of the Gulf Breeze UFO. And he's trying to complete this research on the case before the MUFON conference that was going to be held in the area on July 7th and 8th. And he comes to the house, and he talks with Mr. and Mrs. Menzer. they are like, yeah, come on in. They're like, he explains what he's doing there. And this is how the conversation went according to Myers. He says to them, our paper is pursuing a follow-up story on Ed's sightings and photographs because of the notoriety this area is getting all over the country and even the world. Ed has written a book and is going on all the talk shows. He has become a public figure, a celebrity of sorts. The Menzers nodded their heads sincerely as they listened. I came by because, as I said, this house is where Ed and Francis claim to have taken several of those photos in 1987 and 1988. Well, we were just wondering if possibly you had found or seen anything unusual since you moved in. The Menzers were beginning to look like the couple who had bought the home in the Amityville Horror. Found something? Like what? Mr. Menzer said. Well, first of all, what about a UFO? I asked, only half laughing. No, I can't say we have, Mr. Menzer said, chuckling. Okay, what about any photographs laying around? No. Books about UFOs, photography, unexplained phenomenon? Can't say we have. Any models of UFOs? I was ready to write down another no, but there was only silence. I looked up and they were looking at each other. Then they looked at me. My heart was once again pumping like a kettle drum. Well, we did find something the other day, Mrs. Menzer said. I'll get it. We found this a few weeks ago. At first glance, it looked like a stack of styrofoam plates. Can I see that? I asked. As she walked closer, it became clear what they had found. I recognized it immediately. I had seen it in my feverish, restless dreams and nightmares for months. There was no mistaking it. It was the Gulf Breeze UFO.
It was a 9-inch styrofoam fucking model. Jesus Christ. Fantastic.
So,
look, I've been waiting for the ending of what I knew something had to be coming because the payoff for a 4-episode thing there has to be something there. And this is fantastic. This is someone just moving into the guy's house and finding the fucking model is
furthermore
a movie ending.
Furthermore, this journalist just happens to be like, I should go check out that house and talk to the people who moved in to see if they, I don't know, found a UFO model.
Maybe they found like an old notebook or something, but no, a fucking UFO model.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, of course, Myers would publish an article about the model and it would cause an uproar in the UFO community. He would also work with a team to test out the UFO model and found that they could get remarkably similar results to Ed's photographs when they would shine light through it and when they used a double exposure. Now, of course, Ed denies everything. He declares that debunkers had made the model and planted it in his home to discredit him in time for the upcoming MUFON symposium in Gulf Breeze. And this is exactly the thing that he suggests when he goes on Oprah in, I think, 1990. Which,
okay,
I unfortunately, since I started researching this episode, the video of that particular interview has been deleted from YouTube.
Oh no!
But basically, what it is it's Philip Klass, the skeptic UFO researcher, and Ed Walters, and Ed stating his case, and Philip Klass offering counter arguments for why UFOs are probably not alien craft visiting us, and Ed Walters is countering him, or at least trying to, and then people in the audience coming up for questions. Some are coming up to be like, I saw a UFO. But then there's one guy who is like, hey, I saw in the newspaper recently that they found a model of a UFO in your house. What was that about? And that's where he's like, no, that was planted. That was planted,
Yeah.
So
they're trying to frame me.
Yeah. So again, there's a lot of silly back and forth that's not that interesting. And
the game's up, though.
Basically, Ed does a lot of counter argument stuff that's like little nitpicky things about like, oh, the UFO doesn't look like it does in the photographs, and which is only sort of true. And it's like this. It's like it's weird stuff. Like the shutoff valve is outside. And Mr. Menzer, why did he go to the attic when he could have just go? It's just stuff. It's bullshit.
Yeah, he's trying to find anything to grasp onto to throw the story under the bus, but yeah. Okay.
Now again, Nick Mock, the teenager, and the other teens had come out and talked about him being a practical joker, and he would, I guess, sometimes employ kids to help him with his tricks. On June 17th, 14th of 1990, I believe, one of the teenagers would come forward to reveal that he actually straight up knew that Ed Walters had previously hoaxed UFO photographs. So this was Thomas Smith Jr. He is the son of a local lawyer, and he is a friend of Ed Walters. And he started to come out to reporters from the Pensacola News Journal to tell him stories about stuff Ed had told him and how he had faked UFO photographs and videos. And here's what Tommy says. Ed was in it for the money somewhat, and also for the fact that it was just a big ego trip. He wanted to see if he could get away with it. Ed said he would die and go to the grave with his story. He also had photographs that Ed, I guess, had helped him take of a UFO model that they were not double exposures, but like they were just actual like photos of a model. And Ed had like thought about giving the photographs to the Gulf Breeze Sentinel back then in like 1987. And Tommy, I guess, had like refused to do it and told Ed that the prank was kind of getting out of hand. And he didn't want to be involved in like putting out a fake UFO story to a newspaper. And I guess he like also, there's a question of like why this went on for as long as it did without this kid coming forward. And I guess his parent, there's something that I was seeing about how his parents sort of held him back and were like, we don't want to like screw up the lives of the Walters family by like putting them on blast like this. But eventually they just were like, fuck it. You gotta, this is going too far.
Yeah, this is look, there's a $200,000 book deal involved here. We should probably, say what you know.
Yeah. So here's an account of why Tommy ended up coming forward. When Smith told his attorney father about the hoax in January 1988, as Walters' claims and photos were first being publicized, neither of the Smiths were willing to go public. Both assumed Walters' bubble was sure to pop soon. Young Smith had and has good feelings toward Walters personally. I had some of the best times in high school over there, he told the Gulf Breeze Sentinel. Smith's father confided his son's story to an attorney colleague and to Gulf Breeze Police Chief Jerry Brown. The Smiths went public only in June 1990 after the Walters' book was on the mark and as the 1990 MUFON Symposium set in Pensacola was about to give further exposure to something the Smiths knew to be a hoax.
Okay. Yeah, like the game's up here.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people that will still try to
there are.
Cape up for Ed Walters to this day, but this is he's one of these I almost want to do a fucking episode on the like prankster societies of like the 1800s, because like I feel like so much of this shit can get traced back to those kinds of people in terms of how people have like faked different paranormal and extraterrestrial stuff over the years, because like those have come up in a couple different things I've looked into and I didn't know they were a thing. And I think, look, the prankster spirit runs strong in the world of weird.
Yeah, it's true.
That's just universal.
Very Fae-like, these UFO pranksters. Now here's where the story kind of starts to fizzle out. I'm going to mention something that could be a little teaser for the next time we revisit Ed Walters. Which isn't going to be for a while. I'm going to be real with you.
I
need a break from this guy. Throughout the 90s, he would begin to have more UFO sightings. And a couple of these sightings were with other people. And he would start to see these blinking these like red light UFOs that would flash a red light. And these UFOs would end up getting nicknamed Bubba. In 1994, Ed and Francis Walters would write another book, and that book would be titled The Gulf Breeze Abductions.
Oh, good. We got another. So he ramps it up for the sequel.
Yeah.
It goes from just UFO sightings to full-blown abductions. We're going to get more missing time. He finally figured that shit out at the end of his first run. look, he's going to come back bigger and better than ever.
And also in the 90s, remember, there is the connection to the Gulf Breeze 6, who, for whatever reason, it may have been rumor, were believed to maybe be trying to hunt down Ed Walters because they thought he was the Antichrist and kill him. Multiple people in the Gulf Breeze 6 deny this, and it does seem like maybe this was a weird rumor that happened, but we'll have to wait to discuss the Gulf Breeze abductions and the Gulf Breeze 6 connection for another episode. Here's a funny little end cap about this whole story.
Okay.
It's quick, but I love it.
Little button. All right.
I found a video of a guy who decided to personally research the Ed Walters Gulf Breeze UFO case. He lives in Florida. He goes to a library and finds like microfiche and stuff. The exact stuff that I would love to do sometime. It's a pretty good video. I forget the name of the guy, but if you look up Ed Walters Gulf Breeze UFO, it's like an hour something long video. You'll find it. But what I loved about this video is it ends with this amazing hunt for the UFO model that was uncovered from the Walters household. And his search for this thing takes him to a local history museum that once had it.
Okay.
And then that museum goes, no, a different museum has it now. He goes to visit that museum in a very different, like a totally different area. And that museum goes, we don't have it anymore, but like try this lead. And he follows that lead and discovers and goes and visits it. He discovers that the Ed Walters Gulf Breeze UFO model is now sitting on display in a UFO-themed Florida putt-putt golf course.
Really? Oh my God.
So a fitting end to
that. Oh, that's such a good button.
Ed Walters. So
it somehow made its way through like multiple museums to just now being like part of a fucking golf course.
Yeah.
Jesus. All right.
So that is where it was last seen. And it's on display. And that's Ed Walters. I can't believe there's an entire other book written by this guy that tries to continue this saga after everything I just explained to you. So thank you for joining me through this fucking saga. I love it.
Yeah. That this has been a hell of a ride, and I'm look, I sequels are almost never as good as the original, but I will be on the lookout for that.
Yeah,
you're in the far
I agree.
future.
But we'll see. I'll see what that's all about. Maybe it sucks and I just won't ever do it. But I'll find out. So Niall, are you ready for a big question?
Oh, I so am.
What would be a good prop to put on display at a cryptid, conspiracy, or paranormal themed putt-putt course?
Okay, this is a thing that has just been burned into my brain from watching random History Channel shit as a kid. There was I think it was like a sanitarium or something where there's a door that even after they replaced the door multiple times, that the door in this certain doorway would always have this face of a ghost in it.
Oh yeah. Put that in.
I want to bring in the fucking ghost face door.
Okay.
To my putt-putt golf course.
I like that.
Because like you can put it as an attraction, so like it kind of swings.
Yeah. Oh my God. Maybe knocks your ball
goes
around.
in and out. Yeah.
Or maybe you could
that's my
try
thing.
and hit the ball into the ghost's mouth or something.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool.
There's a lot of things you can do with this. I think it's really untapped potential in golf courses.
Okay. I know what I want.
What do you want?
Mine would be the prize for getting a hole-in-one on the very final hole. You know how like
you're gonna give it away?
Well, so no, it's an experience.
Okay.
So you know how like on the very final hole on these putt-putt courses, you can like if you get a hole-in-one on a thing, you'll get a free game or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
At my putt-putt course, we have the chronovisor. And
fantastic, and you can just witness
the
birth of Christ or whatever.
The birth of Christ as a prize for winning at putt-putt. So I think that could be fun for everybody.
The thing is, I know that there are like Christian themed putt
Yes.
courses out there. Imagine one of those just actually having a coronavirus and being like, hey, if you get a hole in one on hole 18 and only that, no documentary crews, no nothing, you can witness the birth of Christ.
Hey, you want to see your Lord and Savior pop out of the womb? Sink that hole in one.
I'm pretty sure the coronavirus actually too is death, but I went with the birth. It's regardless. Or like they also, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that people always do when
There's so much cool shit you could do with the coronavirus. But this is definitely a Christ thing in my mind.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, I just assumed that the Vatican kind of like loaded it up with only Christ related stuff. They're like, we don't need the other stuff. Just put the Jesus stuff in there.
They set it to Jesus and broke off the knob.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Niall, thank you again for joining me on this fucking journey.
It's been a blast. Thanks for doing the research. This has been a hell of a topic.
Absolutely.
Frankly.
Are you ready for some business?
Let's take care of it. So if you want to follow us on social media, we're on multiple platforms. On Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers, from Google Play to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird and we're probably there.
Twitch.tv/ItGetsWeird. Go and check it out. I'm going to be streaming again soon. I promise. That's coming up within the next couple weeks, as soon as life slows down a little bit. And I think once the winter starts hitting us, I'll definitely be streaming more often because I'm not going outside. Email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. What would be in the Putt gift shop of your dreams vis-a-vis cryptids, conspiracies, and the paranormal, or even UFOs? Let us know in our email. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $2 tier and we have a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, you get access to It Gets Weird TV that comes out every other week, where we discuss a weird TV show. Right now, we are on the final episode of The X-Files Season 1, and then you get to vote for the next weird show as a donor to the Patreon, what next show we're going to watch for the podcast, and we discuss it. At the $5 tier, you get a bonus show that is me or Niall. Sometimes we watch a movie, sometimes we read books, sometimes I talk about weird internet stories. And those are on the off weeks of It Gets Weird TV. So at the $5 tier, you're getting bonus content every single week. Whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday. And you get access to the Discord, where we're hanging out, chatting with our listeners. You can talk to us directly in there, and we're having a great time sharing fucking Bigfoot memes and stuff. If you do not get an invite and you donate to the Patreon, please hit us up on Patreon and say, hey, where's my Discord invite? Thanks. And I'll hit you up with a link to the Discord. We have Discord connectivity issues, so please don't forget to message us. We also have a $1 tier where you don't get anything out of it. You're just saying, hey, I like your show. Here's $1. Thanks for doing what you do. If you can't donate, please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird Podcast.
All right. Thank you all for all your support, and keep spreading the word of It Gets Weird Podcast. I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.
Peace.